In this workshop I'd like to introduce ShapeFactory. My name is Julian Wigman and I'm the principal developer. So what is ShapeFactory? If you're used to using earlier versions of ComfortClient, you'll remember that you have to create your floor plans using an external editor. Now typically I've used Microsoft Visio. I go into Microsoft Visio, draw out my floor plan layout, break that produced floor plan down into smaller blocks, either my rooms, and then I could use those images within my floor plan editor to construct my floor plan. Well, ShapeFactory changes all of that. So from version 5 we've introduced this new functionality. It allows us to completely build your floor plan within floor plan editor. And ShapeFactory is an extensible library of shapes. It's online, it's downloadable from my website. We obviously distribute it with the ComfortClient installation, but over time that ShapeFactory extends and it will grow. So shapes within the ShapeFactory library are vector shapes. So they scale without losing focus. So if you've ever scaled an image and you know it goes blurry, you can scale a vector image and it will retain the same look as it did when it was at a different size. So not only does it preserve as we scale and rotate and stretch and skew, but also we can set properties of those objects to make them interact with our comfort system. As we go through this workshop, we'll be talking about passive objects and active objects. Active objects allow me to link functionality of that object to things that happen within my comfort or my plugins. So let's first start floor plan editor. Now every time floor plan editor starts, it will go off to my website. If you've enabled the functionality and options, you can disable this if you don't want it to happen, and it will look for if any later versions of the library have been introduced since the version was installed. If we were to go off to my website, let's just do that while we're here and look at the ShapeFactory tab, you'll see there's a blog here of changes that happen to ShapeFactory over time. So as I release new versions, you'll see information in this blog about what's been added to that version. So you can choose to upgrade or not update. By updating will not destroy what you've already designed on your floor plans. What it will do is enhance that. So it may be you have an existing object and I've added some extra features to that object. Those will be available for you to onwardly configure. Or it may be I've just added some new shapes completely. So we're going to say yes, so we're going to upgrade 105 to 107. So immediately I open my floor plan editor, I can stretch it. We've covered features of floor plan editor in another workshop, so I won't be looking at the usage of the application itself. But what we'll notice in the insert menu, we've now got a ShapeFactory node to enhance what we had in previous versions of ComfortClient. You can right click on the floor plan and you can see the same library as well. So one of the things we can do is check the version of ShapeFactory we're currently running. You see we're on version 107, we just upgraded. There are two things we'll cover in this workshop. One is inserting and manipulating shapes, and the other is we're going to look at Template Manager. Template Manager is around making our shapes active and linking those to activities within the comfort system. So let's start by creating a simple floor plan just to show some of the features of the product. If we press Insert and press ShapeFactory, you'll see we've aligned and we grouped some of these shapes that are currently available into groups. And shapes can appear in one or more groups depending on how I've configured it in the shape library. This shape library will grow, as I say, as you download later versions of the product. Okay, so you'll see we have some dividing lines through the menu system here. We have the concept of basic shapes. So if, for example, I add a L shape to the window, it will bring up properties about that shape. Let me just cancel out of that for the moment. You'll see I can move a shape around, you'll see I can stretch a shape, you'll see I can rotate a shape using all standard features of the editor. You'll also notice, let me just put that up right again, you'll also notice these yellow squares on screen. These are what we call action points. These allow me to change the design of the shape other than its basic size and rotation and skew effects. So I can stretch it obviously by just using the standard drag handles, but there are times when we want to change other features of the shape. So in this case, an L shape, well, we might want to make instead of the L's areas being equal, we might want to skew them. So I can highlight that, you'll see the cursor changes, and I can drag that across to make it a slightly different shape. If, for example, I was to add a, let's have a look at another shape. Let's add a star shape. I add a star shape on the screen. You'll see again that that has only one action point this time, but as we move it out, we can change the design of the star, so we can go from different designs. So different shapes, you'll see these different yellow node points appear. Let's look at another one. Let's look at, for example, what should we look at? You'll see again now we can have a different action point, and we can use that action point to move and change, in this case, the trapezoid. Insert a triangle, different action points again. We can move to create different types of triangle, equilateral triangle in the middle here, or right angle triangles by going to each side. If I move the bottom node point, it starts to create scalene triangles, so we can create weird effect triangles. Move the top action point again, it drops back. So the action points are ways to configure the shape in finer detail. So we've started to introduce some of the features of what ShapeFactory is about. So let's look again at our action menu. You'll see as we've been adding items, we've got our most recently used appear as well at the top screen. You'll also notice we've broken the menu into different areas. So we've got basic shape functionality here. We've also got this concept of rooms. And we're going to just go in to look at those now. So I'm going to create a room, and I'm going to create a T-shaped room. Okay. So some of the things that you can do as you change the values of that room via the width and height values, you'll see it changes on screen. So I can change the size of it here, or I can change it by dragging it within the product itself. So I can change it by just changing its properties. In a future version of ComfortClient, I'm going to allow you, instead of changing it by pixels, you'll be able to change it by absolute values as well. So if you want to use length measurements to actually set it in millimeters or meters or feet or those sort of settings, then we'll allow you to do that as well. I can rotate the image here, so I can rotate it, by these icons. When I'm happy, I can set the opacity, I can set the rotation. If I want to go into more custom angles, but I'm going to go back to, for the moment, just rotating it 90 degrees. Okay, so one of the features you'll see immediately as we go into a shape is we've got a shape tab down here on the screen. Come back to the templates in a second, but depending on the shape you add to the floor plan will depend on the properties that are available down here in this detail, line and fill. These are static things that we can configure for the shape. Because there's only one property we can define for this particular shape, the wall outline itself, so that's what we call the line. So this wall outline here that I'm highlighting is what we're showing here. So you'll see it's a sort of I've picked a little checker grey sort of effect. And then the room area itself, which is the fill area, I've set to green. I want to change that, for example, I could go and change that. Let's change that to light pink, and you'll see it changed on the design. I can click this, by the way, and I can see a bigger version at the top of the screen. Click back again and it hides. So those are standard features of Floor Plan Editor. So at the moment, what we have here is a static, passive shape. So if I come out of that, you'll see there's my shape that I've just created. Again, I can use my action points, I can stretch, I can move things around. Well, let me just resize that a bit. Let's just I want to create a sort of sample sort of room effect. So there we go. There's a sample room that we'll develop through this workshop. Okay, and that's passive at the moment. If I was to save that away, so let's file, save as. Well, we'll save as, let's call it, so I'll save this to a file called test.fp. So there's our sample we're gonna run in a minute within ComfortClient. Okay, so at the moment what I've done is create a shape on screen that will eventually become my floor plan, but it's a passive object at the moment. What I'll do is I'll exit floor plan editor for a second and we'll just fire up ComfortClient. So at the moment we can't see our new floor plan, so if I go into Window Manager and let's just set above and I'll call that our test floor plan, and I can go and pick it from the list and OK. Here's our test floor plan that we created. So if I log on to my system, you'll see we're now logged on to Comfort, and that is still my test floor plan. It's passive, it's not doing anything, it's still the same color pink as when I defined it. If I go to one of my active floor plans, you'll see the difference. So as I change things, you'll see different shapes light up. Those are active shapes on my floor plan. So how do we make those active on our test floor plan? So I can also go into floor plan editor through ComfortClient, so I can edit on the fly. Even though I'm logged in, I can still edit it. And there's my floor plan. Let's move it a bit over to the left hand side as well, so that it doesn't take up a lot of white space on the screen. Okay, so currently this floor plan's passive. If I want to activate this floor plan, I need to apply a template to it, and I also need to change its properties as well. Now if we go back into the object's properties, if I highlight it, I can either press this icon here to look at its properties or just double click on it. Now the reason this item is passive is because I haven't linked it yet to any Comfort object. So if you look at the top here, you'll see it's type system and its shape. If I pick Comfort, I can then, in this case, let's link this to a zone, and let's link this to zone 5, and then I will link it to an on-off state, because that's typically how I want to control my floor plan. Now you see here, by virtue of me picking on-off, it's immediately picked a template for me, a default template. Now I can go and change that, and we'll come back to that in a second if I want to do that. But I'll leave that set for the moment, and you'll see it's pre-ticked some of the items that I've got on my shape. So if I was to change this to on only, then you'll see that they're pre-ticked. If I change it to on off, you'll see those are pre-ticked. Now that's the default settings that I like to do. If you want to change them, you can just untick them, and you'll see the shape goes back to as it was before they were ticked. So now I've made this shape into an active shape, and I've changed its template by default to be the default one, which is active room. We'll go into what active room means in a second. And I've now ticked which parts of my shape I want to be affected by to make active effectively. Because if you think we can have shapes, as I'll show you in a minute, that have multiple lines, multiple fills, multiple areas, you can define which bits of those that you want to activate. So let's save that. Let's exit our floor plan. We're still logged into ComfortClient, so we'll reload this floor plan. So you'll see now it's changed its shape. If I trigger an active state, you'll see that floor plan now changes. So triggering, in this case, a zone going on or off, it's now triggering the fill of that item. Okay, so by virtue of the template, it's decided to make that active. So let's go back into our floor plan editor again. Double click to look at the properties. Now you remember we see this thing called active room. So let's go and look at the template for active room. So if we open template manager, you'll see we can drop down and we can pick a number of templates. So we were using this one called active room, and here you can see that we have down the bottom here different states for that, both the line and the area. So if we drop down, we've got on-off ramp. For the same for the area, on-off ramp. So you can set properties for each of these states. So for example, if I want the off state to be here, at the moment you'll see the line, the border around this room is a very thin line. Well, that's not very good, is it? So let's change that to more of a wall type shape. So let's go in and we're going to pick a pattern fill. We're going to pick, let's pick horizontal brick, shall we? What colors do we want? Well, we want the partly maroon and partly, you can pick whichever colors you want, to be honest. Okay, and we're going to change its thickness up. So we've got a very strange wall shape going on here. If I came out of that, you'll see my wall shape automatically changes. That's actually quite a horrible color, isn't it? So let's go back and change that. Let's make it a bit more closer to how people would normally set it up. Okay, so I'm going to make our wall a bit thicker because I don't want to. And let's change that to %20. Let's change that to this color. So as you see, by changing the template, you can change how the walls look. If we were to have more walls, so let's add another room to it. So let's add a rectangle room. Let's link that to a comfort shape. So there's my other room. Let's overlap that. So position it as you want it to be. I'd position it, for example, like that. Oh, let's make it a bit thinner, shall we? So there's another room that we've started to build as part of our floor plan. I go into Template Manager now, go back to our active room. This is where we got to. For example, I could go and change that now to, instead of that, I can change it to a diamond shape, for example. And as you see, by changing it in the template, it changes all the room wall structures for you. Now maybe you decide, oh, actually that wall is not thick enough, so I'll go in and let's go back to my active room again, and let's go into that and let's change it, let's make it even thicker. And as you make the wall thicker, it changes the wall thickness, but it doesn't move the rooms about. So the rooms stay in situ, but just the walls become thicker. Now, so what I've done so far is set the off state. I'm going to go back and make that a bit smaller. It's a bit too wide. Let's leave that as 12. So one of the things I can do is I can change the on state. So I can pick on state. So again, that's a thin bar at the moment. I could change that to the same thickness, but it doesn't have to be. You see, I can leave the fill areas of that line different as well. So I could say, well, actually, when it's on, I just want it to be red. So my on state is going to be red. So this is my off state. If I test the on state, it's going to look like that. So let me save that and exit and go back to ComfortClient. So there's the new room that I've just created. Let me trigger the PIR now. And as you see now, it's toggling between what we defined on the template for off and what we defined for the template for on. That's how you turn a shape in from active to passive and vice versa. Okay, so let's go into Floor Plan Editor again. And let's look at this object. So it may be, for example, that this object you want it to not work using the active room template. I could go and pick another template and configure that in Template Manager to do what I wanted to do. I can also, if I want specifics just for this particular object, is I can override that template, and what that will do is bring up a local template that's specific to this object. And again, you'll see the on-off states. The states that it shows on screen here replicate what I've got set at the object state here. So if that was only set to off, I'd only see off appear in the drop-down list here. So this allows me to, instead of using the active room template, I can now use a a local template for this particular object. And there are times when you want to do that. I'll leave it to you to decide when or else whether you want to use override or not, but it's there if you want to do it, and you configure it in exactly the same way. So I don't want that to be grey, I want it to be green yellow, and I want that to be I can load a texture in if I wanted to, so I could download some texture images from the internet, so from wood patterns or from an external file to control the feel. Or I can do a gradient if I want to do a gradient and do a sort of gradual move from left to right. Let's make that a bit thicker, shall we? You can change the way, but that's a local override template. So you can change the way that this active shape then reacts. So the on-off for that particular shape now is governed by its local template, not the global template that we set in Template Manager. So let's look at some other shapes. So if we were creating a floor plan, we might want to add some windows. So let's go into doors and windows. We've got things like a double glazed window. So let's add that to the screen. By default, again, it's passive, it's not linked to any object, so let's link that maybe to a window sensor, so that would be linked to a zone. We might link that to which zone should we link that to? Let's link that to number 4. And again, we might want to be on off state because it's linked to a read switch. You'll notice here now that it appears it hasn't pre-ticked any of those boxes for me. And the reason it hasn't pre-ticked and the reason that this is now ungrayed is because this shape has multiple things that can be set on it. So if we look here, the end caps are the two little, as we say, the end caps on the end of the windows. The window itself are the colours of the lines of the window. The window space is the area between the two end caps. So you can see it green at the moment on the form. As I now click and save away from this, you'll see they go to red. Now you'll see, by the way, that the window space now is gone to the same colour as the wall. Now the reason it's gone to the same colour as the wall is because that's how I've got that active template set up. So what I'll do, let's go into Template Manager again, and let's pick another active shape. So I'm going to pick this. You see, as I pick them, they say which ones are available. So let's pick an active shape. So Custom 8 is an active one. I can right click on it and I can set doors and windows. Give it a name. So give it a name, and now it's renamed it in the list. So it's very obvious to me that template is now available to me. Now the reason that my window workspace shows the same color as the brick is because it's a pen. And if I was to go and look at active room off shape for the pen, then it's this brick color. So what I want to do is to change my doors and windows active one off color to be something different. So let's change that to be the same width as the wall, which was 12, and let's change the off state to be green, like green, and let's change the on state. Make that 12 again. Let's change the on state to be light coral. So I've now got my on state and my off state. I could test those if I want to as well. So there's my on state, it's red, it's the off state is green. I don't need to worry about the fill areas on this particular one because that's going to be dormant. So I go back to my object, and instead of this time picking the active room one, I pick my doors and windows, and you'll see hopefully the window space is still checked. When I come out of that now, then my door and window is now green. So this is showing that it's the off state. So let's drag my window. Let's stick my window on my floor plan, stretch it a bit. Let's clone that, shall we? Let's create another one. Ooh, press the wrong button there. Copy, paste. So there's my other window. Let's put another window down here, shall we? 'Cause that's copy again, paste. Let's rotate it. Stick a window here. So as you see, you can start to build your designs up using windows. Have a look at this one in detail. That one's linked to zone 4. I I think I probably, because I've cloned them, they're all linked to zone 4, so that one is linked to zone 4 as well. So we'll see all three come up trigger when we actually open what trigger that zone. So let's come out of that, go back to ComfortClient again. And there we see our windows added. Now if we trigger one of those windows, you'll see that those windows are now going red, and whatever we've linked to that shape, in this case we've linked a few things to that. So you've now made your window sensors active as well. Let's go back into floor plan editor again. So let's look at some of the other things. Obviously we can go in and add a door. So let's add a single door. Again, we could link that to our comfort zone. Let's link that to a different zone. Let's link that to zone 8, shall we? Again, we can link it to on and off. And again, you see it's not highlighted here. The reason it isn't highlighted is because they're set on the door space. And you see other things we can set here. We can set the door arc color. So if you don't like that grey for the door arc and you want to change it to a different color, you can do that. You can also, you'll see down here, we're introducing the concept of customization. So we can set different things for that object. So if we say, well, actually I don't want the door sweep to be solid, but I want it to be a dashed dot line, and I want the door opening arc to be, instead of light grey, I want it to be light sky blue, or I want to go off to my color picker and say it was actually that color there. I can add that to my custom colors so it will be available for next time I go in. You'll see my door sweep is now yellow dotted. So you'll see you can configure those properties. Now if I wanted the opening arc to be part of my activeness of the object, I could check the box there as well. And you'll see immediately it changes to the off state for that active object. So by manipulating and changing and ticking these boxes, you can make a lot of these settings affect the way your object reacts on the floor plan. So let's you can see by example as well, in this example, that I've defaulted to active room. We want to pick our doors and windows template as well. So you now see it's gone green. Let's put my door on my floor plan here, shall we? You'll also notice there's an action point on that door. If I move it left and right, you'll see it changes the hang of the door. So if you want the door to open that way, just move it around. Save and exit again. Now you'll see my door is linked to an active object as well. So you can see it going red when it activates. Okay, so finally let's go in and just explore a few more shapes. Let's go into floor plan editor again. Now that's great. We put some windows. We created a basic room area. We've linked that to templates, but we want to be adding some more things. So let's go in and start adding some of our kitchen items in. So let's add a double base unit. So there's our double base unit. Again, I've defaulted the colors, but if you want to change the colors, you can just click and highlight and change to a different color. So if you want to show that in a pick a nice color. What will we have? Let's have a nice wheat color, for example. We can change the colors of the units. So I can drag my units around, I can resize them, I can change the rotation of them, I can drop them into my floor plan. Let me just lock all these objects as well. I'll lock those so that we don't move those around as we're changing things. So they're all locked now as well, so I can't now move that object. That's good, probably good practice as you're building your floor plan, to lock things that you don't want to start moving around. Okay, so we can add things like, go back to our kitchen again, we can add a sink to it. So we may want to have a sink on top of our worktop. So let's rotate that back a bit. There's our sink. Drop it on top of our worktop. Double click that to edit it. You'll see again there's no line colors apart from the default shape colors and that we can change in this particular object, but there's lots of areas we can change on the detail. So if we want to show the bowl color, and we want the bowl color to be blue, we want to show it filled with water, then we can do that. Now we could, if we want to, we could make that an active object. We could link that to, say, a zone, and we could link that, let's link that to that one, and we could go back to our bowl color, and if we select on and off for that, we could link the bowl color to an active object as well. So as we come out of the system now, back to the live system, as you see, as I'm changing this value within Comfort, then it's automatically changing the color of the bowl fill. You know, a good example of that might be a flood sensor, or you know, if you may have a sensor on your sink that when it's filled up, you want to show the color change from white to blue to show it's got water in it. Go back to my floor plan editor again. Look at that object again. Some of the other things we could change for this particular object, we can change the hot and cold tap colors. You might have your hot and cold tap colors reversed, so you can change them. You know, if your hot tap's not red and it's bright purple, then you can change it by just changing its color. If you want to change the activeness of that, so that the hot tap shows a color when it's on and when it's turned on, because you've got a flow sensor in on it, and it shows a grey color when it's off. Those sort of things you can change now as part of the active shapes. For example, we can go and add a, let's go back to our kitchen, let's go back to appliances, let's add a range cooker. Let's rotate that, stick that over here on the wall. The same applies to the range cooker. Look, drill into that, you'll see we've got different things that we can change. So the rings are red by default. I could change the ring color. I could make them be active as well. Link them to a floor plan, link them to something that we can then go in and when they're on and off, I can set the colors. So if you want to have a sensor on your cooker that shows red when the cooker plate is on and off blue when it's off, then you could do that again through active properties of the shape. You'll also notice, by the way, that if we look at this particular shape here, there's only stretch handles on the corners. If I was to pick this object here, it's the same. If I was to pick maybe this base unit here, you'll see we've got grab handles on the X direction, but not the Y direction. Now, this is part of the properties of the shape, because some shapes, if you were to be able to stretch them not only diagonally but X and Y directions, it could destroy the context and the shape design. So if I was to stretch this cooker in this direction, the Y direction in this case, then the cooker hob plates wouldn't be round anymore, they'd be oval. So you destroy the intended design for that shape. So I can lock the shape directions as part of the shape design to determine how you can do it. So yeah, I can quite happily scale it up and scale it down, but I can't change its XY properties. Whereas on this particular shape, if I unlock it, just unlock that shape, I can now stretch it X, Y and Z. So I've tried to make it as intuitive as possible, but not allow you to destroy the overall look and feel of what the shape should be about. So there are a number of things, obviously, depending on the room you're creating, will allow you to add things. So appliances, all the sort of cooker type thing, cooker hoods, in the kitchen section, all the type of base units you'd probably want to see, wall units, base units, sink layouts, those sort of kitchen components. In the miscellaneous, light bulb, I could add a light bulb to the screen. And again, I could link that to my C-Bus or my Z-Wave or whatever lighting system you've got controlled under Comfort. So over time more and more shapes will be added to ShapeFactory to extend it further. Please use the Shape Me function to go and request new shape designs or even ask for changes to the shapes that have already been created. Thanks for listening.